12 million records spanning over 1,000 years, the National Archives still doesn't have records as old as the black presence in Britain. Nonetheless, the records at the National Archives can tell us much about the lives of black Britons across the centuries. This online document display aims to provide a brief introduction to some key records across different but connected periods to highlight the range of materials available at the National Archives. Perhaps our most famous early record is the Doomsday Book, a survey of much of England and parts of Wales completed in 1086. And one of the earliest known images of a black man that we have at the National Archives appears in a rare, abbreviated version of the book compiled around 1241. The man is featured holding onto a capital letter I at the start of the section on Derbyshire, and while some historians argue that this is largely decorative, others have made the case that it's indicative of a black presence in Britain at the time. A more concrete reference is the wage slip of John Blank, a black musician in London in the early 16th century. Now, historians have debated whether Blank was his surname or an ironic and discriminatory play on the French word for white. If indeed it was used derisively, I like to think that John would have never been a passive victim in the face of it. As this next document, a petition for a wage increase, shows, John wasn't afraid to stand up for his rights. And of course it also highlights that the theme of resistance to discriminatory treatment was established very early on. Of course, there are also countless documents relating to the relationship between Britain and her colonies which underlay the former's industrial revolution and which highlight the ways in which, to quote the novelist and former director of the Institute of Race Relations, A. Sivanandan, "We're here because you were there." Clearly, the National Archives is a government archive and as such represents the voice of the colonial power. Yet many of these records also highlight the agency and resistance movements of colonized people themselves. These include records relating to slavery and resistance both in Britain, such as the will of abolitionist Olaudah Equiano, named here as Gustavus Vasa, which was the name imposed upon him during his enslavement, and records of resistance in the colonies, such as this proclamation produced in 1832, which offers a reward for the capture of the rebels or freedom fighters involved in Jamaica's Baptist or Christmas Rebellion, a crucial uprising in bringing about the end of slavery within the British Empire. The names listed include Samuel Sharp, described here as general ruler, director of the whole, and preacher to the rebels, who was eventually captured and executed as part of an extremely brutal suppression, although has the honor today of being one of Jamaica's national heroes. Returning to Britain, there are numerous documents detailing the development of multicultural communities in Britain's seaport towns in the 19th and early 20th centuries, as black, Asian, and Arab sailors, who often worked as firemen and stokers on merchant ships, in very hot and dirty conditions, feeding the steamship furnaces with coal, began to settle and have families. Here we can see an identity card of a merchant seaman, a Mr. Jeremiah Anderson from the Registry of Shipping and Seamen. And Jeremiah would also, as this document shows, become a prisoner of war during the Second World War. Then, of course, there is the much better known post-war era, and the National Archives has large numbers of records relating to post-war migration and settlement, including the relatively well-known passenger lists of ships such as the Empire Windrush, go-to documents in family history research. On this page, you can see the name of Aldwin Roberts, better known as the Calypsonian Lord Kitchener, who famously sung, "London is the place for me," expressing the optimism many had in journeying to what was often seen as the mother country. There are also lesser-known documents such as this booklet, A West Indian in England, produced in 1950 by the Central Office of Information and co-authored by Dudley Thompson, one of Britain's first black pilots who served during the war and would go on to become a prominent anti-colonial activist and politician in Jamaica's People's National Party. The booklet was designed to give migrants some idea of what Britain was like, and with passages such as, "With so many faces, all minding their own business, save for those who have come to meet friends, it is small wonder that you feel completely lost and helpless." It served as a sobering wake-up call to the aforementioned optimism of some new arrivals, and certainly makes me think of the title of Sam Salon's book, The Lonely Londoners. Of particular interest to people researching race and racism in Britain will be the records of the Race Relations Board, which was established after the Race Relations Act of 1965 to consider complaints of racial discrimination. Within these documents, for instance, we have the original complaint of Frank Kritschler, the owner of the Mangrove restaurant in Notting Hill, written in 1969. In this letter, Kritschler complains about the refusal of Kensington Council to renew his license to operate as an all-night cafe. He speaks of the unlawful police raids on the premises and argues, "I know it is because I am a black citizen of Britain that I am discriminated against." Of course, this then led to the demonstration against police harassment and the subsequent trial of the Mangrove Nine on the trumped-up charges of incitement to riot, which led to the first judicial acknowledgement of racial hatred within the Metropolitan Police. And this is an important point when looking at records of the event at the National Archives, as many of the relevant documents, such as this photograph, are from Metropolitan Police files and are here precisely because of the over-policing of black communities. But again, it is possible to pick out community voices within these records, such as within this flyer, which we can see from the language, "Brothers and sisters on trial for defending the rights of black people," certainly isn't the work of the Metropolitan Police. So the National Archives holds a wealth of material relating to black history, both in Britain and abroad, in its primary collections and as secondary literature. And although, as a government archive, it does, more often than not, represent the voice of officialdom, from John Blank and his petition for a wage increase to the Mangrove 9 demonstrations and beyond, such as this image from the records of the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Organising Committee of campaigner Baroness Doreen Lawrence. There are countless narratives of agency and resistance, some familiar, many less so, waiting to be uncovered.